Eighth summit currently taking place in Dubai. President Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday spoke on the sidelines with the UN Security Council Chair Antonio Guterres. He handed over a copy of South Africa's Just Energy Transition Plan. Next week, the University of Cape Town's Environmental Humanities South program will launch a climate impact study. Now, the Critical Zones Africa South and East study seeks to explore what conditions make for ease of living in peri-urban areas and the impact of climate change, colonialism, neo-colonialism and governance. Let's speak now to the Environmental Humanities South Africa South Program Director, Professor Lesley Green, and researcher Mpho Ndaba. Very good morning to you both. Perhaps, Professor Green, let me start with you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. It sounds like a really fantastic initiative. The timing well placed as it happens as leaders have gathered, leaders from more than 130 countries gathered in Dubai for the COP28 summit. What's the scope of this initiative? What are you hoping to achieve? Hi, Professor.
Thanks very much for having us on the call. What this project is trying to do is simply recognize that Earth systems don't run on dollar values. So what does it mean if we create political partnerships with Earth processes instead of political partnerships based on dollar values to fix ecological processes at a local level? So it's a social science-led project where we're really trying to foreground human relationships and understand that first and foremost, trying to address environmental catastrophes that are busy unfolding is to address our relationships with Earth, so at a very human level. And what's very exciting for us as a 5-country program is that this is very similar to the ways in which local indigenous knowledges work. So the critical zone is what makes things possible at any point on the Earth's surface. It's the relationships between aquifer and cloud, in short. And if we fix those and get those positive tipping points going, we can do this at low cost, very low cost, which doesn't put Africa into a permanent loop of owing global investors or paying for patents and so on.
Mpho, what have you found when it comes to some of the themes and the research that comes with the scope of the work and the initiative?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important question. And to answer that, what we found is not necessarily new in the sense that when you focus on African environmentalism, the forms of care that African people have always had with nature, the environment, you come to the realization that, as Professor Green was speaking, the fact that the monetarization or the financialization of nature and having very neoliberal responses to these issues is a problem to begin with. So, and I know that a lot of the times you have instances where people have this assumption that African people do not care about climate. But what we are constantly finding is the fact that people do care because our sense of being as African people is very much, ingrained in our everyday life. So I'll make an example. Totems, Isitakazelwa sakho as a black person are something that sometimes even speak to nature. So someone would be having an animal totem that speaks to who they are, and there's this sense of obligation to care for this animal. So in terms of the practices, our everyday practices, everything that we're trying to do as a form of intervention is already there. So it's just a matter of emphasizing it and speaking out against capital, but also the over-financialization of resources, because what is essentially happening, you have instances where people are trying to put dollar value to the kinds of responses out without necessarily wanting to get us out of this mess. So, sometimes research is not as inventive as we would like to make it seem. But, that's a simple answer that I can give.
Professor Green, Mpho also makes mention of it. You made mention of it yourself. Earth systems don't run on dollar values. what stands out for me as I listen to both of you is that as the leaders of more than 130 countries are deliberating on talks in Dubai, one of the themes that came out was on the future of food and farming. In fact, it's actually the first time that this gathering has recognized that what people grow and eat is essentially a key factor in global warming, and that this is a matter that cannot be ignored because, planet warming food is a big topic. What's your take on that? And, given the scope and the nature of this initiative that you're working on?
Well, thank you. The key thing is to work with earth processes themselves. We are sitting in a situation where in the past few weeks the Malawian kwacha has been devalued by 44%. And one of the reasons for that is that they've run out of foreign currency. And if you track that back, one of their major investments globally, one of the major spending items is fertilizer. Now, Malawi is a tropical country. It's got beautiful soils. Why is Malawi spending so much on fertilizer? And, what's happened in the past decade is that the farming in Malawi, farming policy has switched to corporate-based, industrialized seeds, which have been dependent on fertilizers, supposedly to fix up, to address climate. But what that's meant is that, A, you have to monocrop, so you don't have your pumpkins and your beans growing alongside the mealies. So the soils are bare and it's getting hotter. The mycorrhizal fungi that hold the soil together, that make it healthy and make it possible to feed the plants, they die. The soil is then vulnerable to wind erosion and water erosion. So there's tremendous harm that's been done to soils by shifting to industrialized agriculture, because they haven't thought through what are the plants, these patented seeds with which you mustn't grow anything else. What are they doing to the soil? They haven't thought that through. So there's been tremendous harm to soils, and once you've lost your fungi within the soil, the soils have to have fertilizers, because what the fungi do is they translate the nutrients that are in the mineral grains of the soil into nutrients that a plant can absorb. But once those are gone, you are dependent on fertilizers. So when soils become addicted to fertilizer, you have to just keep spending, and that's one of the things that's happened. So it's been a process that's unfolded over a couple of decades, but it's had catastrophic effects on farming in Malawi and therefore on food production. So it's with less and less money to subsidize small-scale farmers, there's a really worrying future for Malawi and food security. So our approach is that it's not helpful for African countries to accept global investments from profit-taking companies that's going to amplify our debt, amplify our foreign exchange outputs, and not, and make us dependent on those inputs in perpetuity, which, that's the case study I've just spoken about. So the crucial thing is for us to work with the earth processes at a local level, as farmers in Africa have always done, to work with cow manure, to work with leaf litter, to make sure that you farm in such a way that the soils stay cool, so that you've got that ground cover and so on. So to partner with the actual earth processes makes for an affordable, sustainable local governance, and that's what we're trying to move towards, to do 5 case studies in 5 African countries that can assist local people to work more effectively with small-scale government and work with better policies that are not dollar-driven, but that are actually earth process-driven, so that we ensure Africa's food sovereignty. And what's fascinating about that is that some of the very first post-colonial thinkers, like Aimé Césaire and Amilcar Cabral, were thinking about the relationship between people and land. And Cabral himself was a soil agronomist, and he was absolutely dedicated to the view that if Africa looks after its soils, we will have sovereignty.
Absolutely. mind-blowing. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there very abruptly, but let me thank you both for weighing in on this topic. The UCT's Environmental Humanities South Program Director, Professor Lesley Green, and researcher Mpho Ndaba. Thank you so much for your time.